Chapter 9. Exogenous Nodes. As I sat restrained within a private monorail carriage, its tinted windows a subtle indication to this discreet service, transporting the latest batch of legally classified insane nodes that were uncorrelated with state utopia's economically efficient model. Their inferred sample data and implied thoughts being exogenous, falling outside of the great beta linear regression stationary process. These unfortunate nodes were now categorized as suffering from an exogenous psychosis. Their predicted routines and intentions moved outside of any stationary correlated processes or expected rational. They were therefore unpredictable, unaugmentable, exogenous damaged nodes. However, unlike an endogenous sigma node who became a redundant node by unknowingly transgressing their expected statistical conformity, redundant nodes whose monthly standard deviations, p-values and trends, unintentionally exceeding the state utopia's monthly confidence interval quotas of the contemporaneous normalized distribution of officially acceptable standard deviations of averaged normalized thought, averaged normalized consumerism, and aggregated normalized demand. Yet these unfortunate exogenous sigma nodes had blatantly transgressed their expected statistical conformity. Unlike the redundant nodes who unintentionally fell outside of the confidence interval and were sent to Arcadia as mere statistical realizations of the utopian state, yearly expected 5% elimination of the population that fell outside of the confidence interval per year. The process of elimination being the unbiased, subtle, Arcadian, express genocide. Its victims usually consisting of endogenous nodes that even prided themselves of thinking mean and being confident. The unlucky redundant node's fate was the fault mainly of mere probability, as 5% of even statistically compliant nodes were destined to fall outside of the confidence interval, no matter how earnest or loyal they were to state utopia's consumerism and patriotism. It was as if the endogenous nodes were coerced into participating in a hidden lottery which the state gambled with their lives. Yet the exogenous nodes were regarded as different, intentionally falling outside of their E-graph confidence interval. The state surmised that the exogenous nodes must suffer from some psychosis. Therefore, the utopian state magnanimously created a process to heal their exogenous routines, consumption, and thinking, back to a stationary process of contributing endogenous nodes to reside back within the comforting, error-free regression function and nurturing sigma-cast confidence interval. To heal them, first, they were publicly removed from society, and then mercifully they would be rehabilitated to be, once again, be placed within the great harmonious sanctuary of the official contemporaneous mean, the average, within the nurturing sigma-cast of the confidence interval, far from extremes and significant uncertainty, to become once again bland, apathetic, consistent, obedient, endogenous sigma nodes, who would gladly bend their individual utility expectations and their will to fit within the cumulative average of society's expected quotas. Then finally they would be reintroduced back into the utopian society, perhaps in the future as healed, healthy, normalized, sigma-cast, endogenous nodes. They may perhaps inadvertently transgress their expected covert monthly quotas. Then they would be sent a letter inviting them to Arcadia as per usual, removing them from the great beat regression model with an unbiased, impartial methodology of statistical inference. Yet the exogenous node's data resided far outside of the confidence interval, and so blatantly, their daily trends and correlations fell into a perceived chaotic, continual, heterostochastic trend, with persistent non-stationary movement, inevitably corrupting the great economically efficient linear regression model with node-specific error turbulences. Their current and past observed stochastic routines, emotions, and implied thoughts were so far removed from the normalized predicated trend that they had to be removed from the statistically augmented society. As they did not contribute, nor could they be predicted in a forecast model. Therefore, the exogenous nodes were no longer part of the contributing society, the population of statistically conforming endogenous sigma. They were no longer classified by the augmenter, state utopia, or the Ministry of Inferences as animate or even unanimate nodes. I looked around the monorail carriage. It seemed that most of the somber-looking exogenous passengers were sane. They looked as average as any other node, yet here we were upon this private monorail, all of us officially classified as economically inefficient. Perhaps some or most of these exogenous nodes had epiphanies and realization of the dystopian constrictive nature of the state. Perhaps they yearned to be free and to let their minds process non-stationary, freely, to feel and think as they chose, letting their minds follow auto-regressive thinking paths and frequencies on random walk far outside of the confidence interval of state utopia expectations and constraints, to never pass the official restrictive mean. Many exogenous nodes had a history of impeccable statistical conformity and were not regarded as classical outliers. They had held desirable consumption and credit ratings. Their data highly correlated with significant macroeconomic consumerism and business cycles. They were redeemable, having the potential to become exemplary future expected consumers. The state would also weed out any sick, politically rebellious exogenous nodes and heal them from the madness of alternate hypothesis syndromes, such as myself. The monorail continued towards its destination, where we were to be committed, at the Ministry of Archetypes Augmentation Clinic, where our minds would probably receive enhanced, prolonged conditioning until we felt obliged to heal and accept the utopian state's quotas and directions once again. The anxiety of anticipation started to overwhelm me whilst the monorail passed through the thick steel clinic gates. I started to consider all the possible horrors that may possibly arise within such a place. My eyes anxiously examined the strange, unusual, antiquated, dark brown 19th century mansion that stood brooding and foreboding within the high perimeter fences. I had heard many terrible rumors about the Ministry of Archetypes Augmentation Clinic. Perhaps they were just rumors, yet another set of subtle propaganda stories to persuade the nodes to conform. I thought back momentarily with a degree of shame, remembering the odd occasions when I had reclassified a node exhibiting chaotic statistical routines and behavior as economically inefficient, possibly suffering from psychosis, and officially classified them as exogenous, with the stroke of a pen, condemning them to the Ministry of Archetypes Augmentation Clinic. I felt a more deep-seated repressed guilt for my previous responsibilities of perpetuating the state's monthly cull, whilst carrying out my duties at the Ministry of Inferences. The monorail glided to a gentle stop. Its effortless, gentle deceleration was a sickening antithesis to an anxious anticipation of impending doom, of whatever horrors may lay ahead. I felt my confidence already deteriorating, regressing to an ergodic mean of complete unpredictable hopelessness magnified with a coefficient integer representing the certainty of horrors awaiting me as I began to fully realize my new casteless categorization. Exogenous, non-stationary node, suffering from the alternative hypothesis syndrome. Even though I had been trapped within the beta cast of state utopia's confidence interval whilst I was a productive, economically efficient node, I had always been confident in the predictability of my existence. My experiences within the state never were extreme, yet now I was uncertain of my unknown immediate future. The anticipation had now convinced me that I would soon be suffering. I now accepted the assumed prior, that my immediate fate would be unpleasant. A rational perception based on countless rumors and my magnified anxiety. I could not predict with any statistical significance of even considering harboring any degree of hope to escape or at least survive any ordeals that may lay in wait in each new moment of unfolding binary expansions of the future. But at least I knew that with each new expansion into the probability distribution frequency of the future, with each new realized binary expansion of some conditional expectation, that I would have some new piece of information, some new piece of experience, relative to my perceived, assumed, prior forged by all the of previous rumors I had been privy to. As time progressed, I would become more confident of what to expect. I hoped to survive, but perhaps the future had some terrible realization of events that far surpassed even this terrible prior expectation. My anxious emotions, therefore my implied thoughts, were already exhibiting increased stochastic integrated routines whilst I fumbled for my seatbelt, whilst getting up and looking around nervously. Perhaps this uncharacteristic nervousness I was beginning to exhibit would slowly become an exogenous, mad, permanent state. Maybe it happened to all the newly classified exogenous nodes. They accept their reality and classification over time, a neuroplasty conditioning. It would take a strong will to overcome this situation, I concluded as I tried to regain my composure. Yet I still felt fear, unlike the countless heroes in films and novels who always seemed to just accept any drama they confronted. Anticlimactically, I spent the first few days sitting around within an open-glass conservatory of the large 19th century mansion of the Ministry of Archetypes Augmentation Clinic. Each day of the first week I sat sedated, oblivious to all the exogenous patients in this new situation. I tried to rationalize the new situation through a blurred mind and eyes, yet everything seemed to be in slow motion and soothingly surreal. I tried to preoccupy myself by focusing on reading old magazines, discussing arbitrary topics, but I could not concentrate. I could read the words easily enough, but the meaning within the sentences and paragraphs eluded me. I sat talking to the blurred grey silhouettes of the exogenous patients, whilst my mouth slurred my mind's words, dribbling out, escaping from the corners of my mouth intermittently. My seated posture now, a chemically engineered stupor, maintained by a steady flow of forced oral sedatives twice daily. Within my stupor I chatted to any exogenous nearby, whether they were awake or not, imaginary or real, listening or not. I rambled on about superficial, non-intellectual topics, even the most banal trivialities imaginable, as my subconscious slowly unwound due to the antagonistic inhibitive drugs, squeezing out data from my psyche that lay dormant deep within me until now. The chemicals affected the weightings of the flowing electrical pathways of my brain's structure. Now my neurons sparked and flowed in inefficient, never-used-before configurations. My mind was now churning out a sedated melee of previous inhibitions, of unanswered issues of a dormant subconscious partial psyche, purely existing only to support the main intention, the main psyche. I resembled a mumbling simpleton, yet in fact my mind was just downloading superficial data and running executive kernels that were not ever meant to be at the front of my psyche. My mind changed inefficient neurons' patterns to regurgitate past trivial occurrences of the subconscious. All those decades of mindless television shows and bombardment from advertisements had sunk into my subconscious, and now all the mindless nonsense that had soaked into my porous mind without my consent was slowly, consistently weeping out. I resonated in uncharacteristic, endless chatter, my brain subconsciously spewing out all the mindless trivia it contained, perhaps in an attempt to relieve itself, to self-augment, or maybe it was just following a skewered pattern, an inefficient temporary damage path maintained by the chemical augmenting sedation. My subconscious, and now my inhibited consciousness, felt relieved. Uninhibited after decades of willfully moderating its own thought patterns to evade the scanners and maintain a statistically acceptable profile. I rambled on for hours, free in my safe, distorted, skewered, two-dimensional world where none of the parallel lines met as they do on a globe. My intentions, psyche, and very interpretations of who I was were no longer consequential. I merely accepted each moment in my slightly unpleasant yet soothing, blurred world of two-dimensional silhouettes, harmless acquaintances, spewing out the most banal trivialities, yet everything seemed superficially normal. I had accepted my new reality whilst I waited for the next helping of sedation to maintain the utopian illusion. To me there was only now. No yesterday, no tomorrow. There was only 5 minutes from now or 5 minutes ago. If I had been a Buddhist, I would have perhaps thought of myself enlightened, living only in the now, not thinking, just accepting the reality I was being presented with. The clinic, the patients. I did not think, why am I here, or how can I escape? Not even, I am here. Just, I am part of this immersion, of this ethereal, blurred existence, unquestioning, merely accepting, being a part of the experience. If I could reason at all beyond the regurgitated memories of talk shows and immediate trivial functional concerns, such as where did I leave my cup of water, I started to feel institutionalized, even perceiving the grand, antiquated Victorian building and its imposing, spacious, glass-walled conservatory creating an aura of homeliness, giving me a sense of blurred peace, lulling me into a false sense of security. A doctor wearing a long white jacket passed through a doorway and approached me as I slouched in a chair in the conservatory. "Good morning, Mr. Bayes," greeted the doctor enthusiastically with a big genuine smile. "I hope I do not embarrass you, but I have been observing you through the cameras in a different room for a few days now. I am the head psychiatrist here at the clinic, and I have jotted down a few observations of your behavior on one of these outdated pens and notepads," he said, then laughed softly. I mumbled, "You want to help me, even though I am a Ministry of Inferences beta, who has rejected the state's apodictic null hypothesis?" "Mr. Bayes, I am here to help you," he smiled. "I am not here to judge you. You need our help. You are consistently outside of the confidence interval, far beyond it. You are, unfortunately, an exogenous node now." exhibiting willfully stochastic, non-stationary routines and processes, even harbouring fanciful, rebellious notions of an alternate hypothesis syndrome, said the doctor, shaking his head, seemingly finding the very notion of such a concept unacceptable to even consider. He became more serious, his face edged with concern. You are not merely contributing unpredictably, non-stationary, with an integrated trend. You are not even correlated with the error terms. You are purely exogenous. You need to be regressed to the mean to become once again a contributing endogenous node. Don't worry, it is quite natural. Many nodes have harmful experiences and memories. But fortunately, we have the technology to create a restricted model of your mind, to remove harmful memories and corrupted variables. We will render many of your mind's variables to dummy variables. Some of them will be rendered 0, and others elevated to a value of 1, with the use of the confabulation treatment, replacing and modifying memories with the augmentation of dummy variable manipulation. Soon, any unpleasant memories will no longer exist. Soon, you will be fit and healthy enough to return to the great utopian state. He beamed with joy at the generosity of the utopian state, to regress me back safely within the harmonious state's will, which supersedes all other wills. Mr. Bayes, there are no bad nodes, only sick nodes, uncorrelated, integrated endogenous nodes that consistently and blatantly fail to conform to their expected contemporaneous quotas, whisked falling, lost into the meaningless abyss of an exogenous psychosis. We can calculate to a certain probability region of the brain's structure, its memories where it stores those harmful memories and emotions, products of exogenous shocks and stochastic error terms, of extreme experiences and corrupted intentions. We will erase those harmful memories and integrated intentions without damaging other brain cells, yet refilling the harmful memories with pleasant pseudo-ones, without physically harming you. It will calm and stabilize your psyche, augmenting and creating a new chain of intentions, auto-regressing them towards an ergodic mean. This will help you become correlated once again within the monthly statistical quota mean. Your routines and thinking will become stationary once again, devoid of any stochastic error shocks that corrupts your intentions with integrated thoughts of imagination, dreams, and of a selfish will, which is usually only concerned with I instead of us. You will not feel alone or uncorrelated again. You will become once again a contributing, healthily animate endogenous sigma node, happily bobbing along the official utopian state trends and cycles, concluded the doctor. It's not so much that exogenous nodes and variables are uncorrelated with the state, or that they don't contribute to the linear regression model of the beta, which regress them into the safe, nurturing statistical harmony, free of extreme thoughts. Those are valid reasons, yet on a statistical, econometric level. Exogenous nodes are not part of the contributing, officially chosen, independent variables of the endogenous variables used in inferring the regression model to test state utopia's apodictic null hypothesis, that the state's monthly null hypothesis of statistical conformity is efficient. The certain, stable, stationary process's previous variable is coupled with a current error term, creating a shock, unpredictability, an inability to forecast estimates efficiently, leading to uncertainty within the economic efficiency model of state utopia, the great harmony of technology and statistical routines designed to guide the nodes, minds and routines, to an efficient utopia. Exogenous nodes are merely shocks to the model, shocks influencing the endogenous, loyal, inferred variables, and nodes. Yet the exogenous are not influenced by the endogenous. They are stochastic, error terms, leading to non-stationary processes, random walks, autoregressive moving averages. Uncertainty, therefore inefficient movements, tainted with past dissipating stochastic error term shocks. Stochastic is bad, random is bad, heteroskedastic is bad. It affects negatively the level of certainty for the state utopia's internal rates of return, their net present value, where there is no opportunism, no arbitrage, to erode the state's efficiency of its markets. No overpriced shares, no underpriced assets, only the correct value at each inference of the strong market hypothesis, no alpha, no abnormal returns, just an harmonious beta with its trusted long-term returns. So, you see, exogenous nodes and variables are harmful, leaving non-stationary, unit-root, integrated movement processes with trends and cycles, the great underlying mean, the great intellectual asset, the great given, known, fixed, mean. That is stationary, predictable with processes and routines evolving with regularly and certainty. The confabulation room treatment will create alternate memories placed in your psyche to remove the unpleasant, experienced memories that you have based your exogenous intentions and perceptions on, which influence your non-stationary nature. Your non-stationary time series needs to be made stationary, with differencing. We will enforce strict statistical quotas, which you must comply to, concluded the doctor. Later, an orderly had gathered all the patients together to tell us to comply to the Ministry of Archetypes' trivial routines that the exogenous patients were obliged to adhere to. At 4 o'clock, you must write 400 words. Why state utopia's apodictic null hypothesize should never be rejected. At 5 o'clock, eat 5 morsels of food. At 6 o'clock, sing the national theme precisely 6 times at 7 o'clock. Read 7 pages of revised history. And at 8 o'clock, sleep for 8 hours. Any transgression from the mean, outside of the narrow, normalized confidence interval, you will be guided back with a shock or an extra dose of medication. You will comply, you will be attentive, and you will follow the lead of the group and adhere to. It's for your own good. We will augment you back to a stationary time series process. You will no longer deviate from the regression function. You will become endogenous once again, a contributing sigma node of the great beta that nurtures and protects us. There is no I, only us, all contributing, stationary, predictably to the given, fixed, known, mean of state utopia, boomed the loudspeaker announcement. The doctor asked me, Bayes, you once said that state utopia commits an unbiased, covert, monthly genocide. Yes, I think so, I said, barely remembering the Arcadian Express as my mind had suffered a few minutes of the corroding ravages of the confabulation room treatment. Oh, come now, Bayes. It's preposterous. Even to you, an exogenous sigma node whose extreme outlying non-stationary random walk thinking. It is merely a deluded perception. There is no genocide. I think I remember sending nodes to their doom, I replied meekly, not completely sure. I am sure you did not. You are just a victim of this non-stationary, extreme, meanless, psychotic exogenous. But Arcadia, I paused, struggling to remember any specific fact that all my past perceptions and beliefs were founded on. This important missing fact regarding the validity of Arcadia and of the genocide existing. I continued unsure. I think I worked on the redundant nodes data, their confidence interval quotas. Redundant node, another new term, and Arcadia. The doctor laughed almost apologetically. Bayes, I am sorry, but this is for your own good, he told, one orderly, to shock my temples, which they did. Ironic, I thought. They were shocking me with a relative exogenous stimulus to my psyche, to make my thinking stationary, to conform, a shock error term, influencing my state of mind. There is no Arcadia. There is no genocide, played a continuous recorded mantra. They left me half-conscious, whilst I lay there for hours listening to a recording. There is no Arcadia. State utopia is harmonious. There is only statistical bliss. Conformity is the right choice. Think average. Think mean. No extremes. No non-stationary. Why be exogenous when you can enjoy the bounty of the endogenous? There is no Arcadia. The intermittent entering orderlies, like the doctor, were not aware of any proof that there may even be an Arcadian express which ran regularly from St. Pancras Underground Station every day. The doctor finished reading from his computer screen. Who is Mrs. White? I should have tried to save her. Who? Mrs. White. White. Where is she? Gone. So there is no Mrs. White. My next-door neighbour. It says here Mr. Brownian was your neighbour. They must have changed the data set. Come now, Bayes. You really are suffering, but we will heal you. I take no pleasure in this treatment, but it's for your own good. You will thank me one day. Many previous exogenous nodes do. In fact, all of them, the doctor said, smiling, not fully comprehending that they had no choice as it was to be expected. The previous exogenous patients were only released after they had been sufficiently conditioned. Therefore, what else would a conditioned previous patient say or think? Only respect and admiration for state utopia and the good doctor who healed them. She's not dead, Bayes, said the doctor. I turned around for a moment, hopeful that it may be true, to ease my guilt of not warning her and the other countless others that I was partially responsible for amending their confidence. Interval data each day. Because she never existed, can't you see? I'm trying to help you, said the doctor. He then muttered to himself, if only I was authorized to continue to use the confabulation treatment. I whimpered. I could not do anything otherwise. They would have sent me too. Sent you where? Inquired the doctor. Send me to Arcadia as a redundant node to be removed from the great linear regression model, or terminate me as being an aware outlier if I refuse to go. No, there's no termination, no redundant nodes or aware outliers, no Arcadia. Can't you see, Bayes? You are delusional. You are non-stationary. You're thinking, moving in stochastic processes, movements and trends away from the mean, uncorrelated with the mean contribution. Away from the mean, driving you to the abyss. You need to come back to the mean, to oscillate through the mean, and remain within the confidence interval of the statistical quotas. Then you will be sane once again, stationary, predictable, stable, reliable, contributing to the bounties of the state where we all benefit from, to become an endogenous contributing sigma nodes once again, instead of being an uncorrelated error term, fumbling around in the darkness of the outer reaches of the sample space, integrating away into the non-stationary abyss of the darkness. Termination? It's all in your imagination. Don't worry, soon. Your non-stationary thoughts, referred to as imagination, will be quantized into stationary normalized thinking processes. No. Arima can confirm it. Who is Arima? The highest-ranking alpha node. No. Prime Minister Autarky is. No. Arima. You probably derived that name from the auto-regressive integrated moving average process, ironically the same treatment you are receiving, said the clever doctor thoughtfully. It's all in your extreme, unit root, integrated, non-stationary, unfixed, unknown, meanless, mindset relating to econometrics. Your non-stationary thinking processes, your imagination creating vivid tragic narratives and characters with pseudo-scientific interpretations of econometric theories to justify the depression you feel being outside of the confidence interval and processing far from the reassuring, nurturing, wholesome, given fixed mean of state utopia and its great linear regression of the beta. I have seen many like you before, but I am here to help you. I want to send you back into the wonderful state utopia which nurtures us, concluded the doctor genuinely. I was taken to the confabulation room where the treatment began. As the treatment began, at first seemed like a dream, even enjoyable, but soon a subtle anxiety and unpleasantness started to form within my head. We will minus your past, harmful, hurtful memories, and augment you back into the harmonious contemporaneous mean of the utopian state. To only follow the state's will, minus my own. No mysterious great plus sign, I questioned. The doctor looked confused, then replied, Yes, Bayes, we will add many pluses of pseudo-memories during your confabulation treatment. But no great plus sign, I asked. I am not sure what you mean, Bayes. Perhaps it is the medicine we are giving you, replied the doctor, puzzled. I am not sure either, doctor, I replied, confused yet uneasy. Suddenly I was taken to different parts of my past, a rushing kaleidoscope of experiences forwards and backwards at different speeds and intensities, like a computer searching for a file on a hard drive. The memories were unsettling, the uncontrolled past memories being moved around, causing me to feel severe anxiety. I started to lose track of reality. Then a memory was played on a screen. It was captured, digitized, modified, and put back into my mind. It had damaged the memory of the confidence interval cull, the Arcadian Express, the primary painful memory. A new banal memory was written over it. As randomly played pseudo-memory, running again and again, until I started to believe it actually happened. Just as I thought I could endure no more, and would completely succumb to the process, the computer screen went blank. Mercifully, my mind was no longer controlled by the confabulation treatment. What is going on? Cried out the doctor, who he felt was on the verge of healing my tortured mind. A loudspeaker in the hallway bleared out, Doctor, please report to the conference room. Priority. The doctor immediately left the confabulation room, obedient to the official summons. It seemed like an eternity before the doctor returned to the confabulation room. His expression was that of frustration with a message he had received, informing him to stop all further confabulation treatment administered on me. The doctor looked at me as if he had failed me in the treatment, as he dutifully unfastened the straps and took me back to the conservatory. A few days later I met the doctor again in his office. The doctor closed the door. Then we both sat on opposite each other at his desk. I felt broken by the many treatment sessions and medicine doses. The doctor, sensing my breaking point, started the conversation by stating, "Bayes, I want to tell you sincerely that we want endogeneity. We want the endogenous variable to be influenced by lagged previous endogenous results, coupled with the error term. We want that. We want a Bayesed, skewered, not completely stochastic, not completely random results. We want a biased, controlled, malleable result that has autocorrelation in it, has some predictability in it, that has a skewered, lagged, predictable, auto-correlated relationship hidden within the model. Unlike true econometrics, unlike true statistics, where endogeneity is eradicated, where there is no correlation, where lagged endogenous variables influencing the error term are not wanted. But we want non-stochastic results, endogeneity. With econometrics and statistics, a pure unbiased result is wanted, but the states model, Bayes, the states model, we want a skewered result. We want a controlled result. We want results to equal the given prior. We want the data to fit the prior assumed, expected, regression function line, unlike with real statistics, unlike with real econometrics, where the best fit, the best least unbiased estimator, the regression function, is the result of the data. With the state, it is the other way round. We want the data to fit around the gradient, to fit around a prior regression function, to fit around the aggregate demand that we create, the consumption we control, the state we control, the variables we control, the results we control. So we want endogeneity. We want the error terms to be not equal to zero. Given the endogenous term, we want autocorrelation. We want that. But simultaneously, we don't want individual exogenous nodes. We don't want nodes that are outside the model, nodes that can influence the endogenous variables but cannot be influenced by them. We want endogeneity. We want endogenous nodes, not exogenous nodes. We don't want variables that are outside the model, so there's a contradiction in terms. Collectively, we want endogeneity, but individually, we want non-exogenous nodes. Endogenous nodes, concluded the doctor. The following days and weeks, I became completely docile and compliant to the stationary endogenous routines and rules of the clinic and processing orderlies. I no longer rallied to the aid of other unfortunate exogenous. I merely sat, accepting the routines expected of me and of this micro-society within the walls of the Ministry of Archetypes Augmentation Clinic. Yet within this constrained, controlled environment, at the very limit of society's control, I felt strangely free. I no longer worried about constraining my thoughts to appease the Sigma node scanners on the outside of these walls. I had embarrassed myself throwing away my career to immaturely rebel against the system. What better alternative was there? I no longer had a clear memory of my past role at the Ministry of Inferences, and the unpleasant feelings I strangely associated with these almost forgotten memories, partially corroded by the incomplete confabulation room treatment. Names such as White, Arcadia, confidence interval, apophenia, resonated in the murky, partially damaged area of my mind, which was not completely corroded. Yet I struggled to remember, not helped by the compulsory consumption of brain-fogging medicine twice daily. A form of chemical exogenous shocks to my organic default thinking, augmenting my mind into a conforming, stationary, thinking process, as if they were anti-shocks, anti-errors, correcting my mind back to the stationary imaginationless, will-less, of simply conforming and flowing the expected accepted trends and routines. My thinking was integrated, meanless, exogenous, influenced by imagination, will and the animal spirit, unpredictable, creative, attributes of a non-conforming, meanless mind, where the errors did not fit or correlate within the carefully chosen endogenous dependent variables, or fit with expected results of the great linear regression model. Therefore I was mad. Therefore I must become sane, stable, stationary, and accept the fixed, given, known, mean of the great beta, linear regression model's apodictic null hypotheses, by accepting state utopia's quotas and expectations. What alternative hypothesis was there, I concluded? Accepting the clinic's strict routines was the only way to becoming truly sane again. I am on my way to being cured. I have accepted that there was no other alternative and that this utopian system is the best. I meditated, clinging onto the mantra constantly, the only way to becoming sane. Once again. Then I could contribute to this great utopian state once again, as an obedient, conforming, confident, rational thinking mean, accepting proudly as a contributing endogenous node, no longer ashamed or embarrassed due to my past rebellion. I sat in the glass Victorian conservatory, surrounded by the different exogenous patients who sat or shuffled around without meaning or direction. Some were trapped in their exogenous, chaotic, stochastic, non-stationary, meanless, mad thinking. Yet there was hope they could be cured of their depression, their micro-subconscious rebellion to escape the mundane, to escape the hopelessness of the conformity of the common node, the menial life of unfulfillment. But they would be cured and sent back to proudly accept the given, known, fixed, mean of the stationary procedures of the utopian state. As I sat in the conservatory with the other exogenous patients, I looked out through a large glass window and focused intently on the outside garden scenery. I was seeking solace to escape this mundane existence of waiting sedated for another helping of toxic medicine. I felt resigned to the sedated apathy surrounding me. As I stared outside, I noticed the bare silhouette of a leafless autumn tree, standing out against the morning sky, a glorious sunrise, the clouds illuminating by the resplendent orange and red tints, accentuating the fresh morning sky, which itself gleamed with a pure, clean innocence of different shades of blue, a patchwork of layered impressionistic textures, different grey and white clouds intermingled into a fractal smooth tapestry of a classical sunrise. The morning sky, lit up by the rising sun, to grace the slumbering earth with its presence once again. A solitary, puffy, opaque cloud glided against the orange and red sunrise, accentuated by the solitary tree silhouette jutting out proudly against the sky. The tree, branching out, forming a binary expansion, fractal, rounded pattern, forming a rounded border. The shape of the tree branching out reminded me of a schematic graph of synapses of a growing brain, growing either right or left at each decision point. How Arima was right about the brain resembling a bonsai tree. The synapses of the brain were malleable, physically growing in different directions as if fluid, especially in unbiased growing nodes. the utopian state could affect its growth and direction within individuals, as Arima had socially engineered. Arima had mentioned how they could not change their synapses in fully developed brains. Yet with the introduction of other trees, other nodes, other minds, perhaps they could affect the individual's mind indirectly. I appreciated the illuminated background of the sky, lit up by a solitary cloud, passing directly behind the silhouette of the tree. The sky was beautiful. It was just a tree, but I saw a confidence interval within the shape of the branches, and within the cloud a randomness of unrealized probabilities which I perceived as hovering just directly behind the tree. The cloud glowed a soothing bright orange and red as the cloud was lit up by the elusive rising sun. The glowing cloud just behind the branches resembled the thoughts and knowledge that the nodes' minds, which fed on within the growing branch synapses. The mind schematically resembled this leafless tree. Its nutrients are knowledge and ideas, the sensory input represented by the sky and the lit-up cloud. The lit-up cloud resembled the knowledge of a biased mind. The tree branches like synapse, the breeze passing through the leafless branches, a metaphor for the branches feeding on the knowledge and ideas of sensory input presented by the fresh morning sky and the illuminated cloud. The lit-up cloud resembled the knowledge, thoughts, and soul of the mind. What actions and ideas the mind and soul took? Was it purely from the synapse of a node that can change their mind or perspective faster than a fluid synapse can transmit? Therefore, maybe it was the cloud of knowledge that decided or influenced the individual's change of mind, to be good or bad, to like or dislike. If other individuals came that were tainted, they could influence the mind as well. Like the other trees, also were lit up by the cloud. What determines a mind's action and ideas? A spirit, its purity in the synapse of a node's mind. It can change the node's mind and perspective faster than a fluid synapse. Maybe it was the cloud of knowledge that decides or influences the mind's spirit or chooses what mind is good or bad, to like or dislike something. If other ideas appeared that were tainted, then they could influence the node's mind as well, like the other trees, always lit up by the cloud. Maybe the cloud represented the spirit. I was awoken from my meditative contemplation to be wheeled through the foyers to the doctor's office. The doctor interviewed me in his office once again. His tone and emotions were unusually serious this session. As he was aware that I had changed, that I had accepted and submitted once again to the state's confidence interval and economic efficiency act. So, Bayes, how are you? I do not know. You don't know? No. What have you to say? About what? About things in general? Nothing. Nothing? Yes. Why? Because I am nothing. How are you nothing? Because I am exogenous. And so? Because the exogenous variable nodes are not affected by the great economically efficient regression function model that guides the nodes to be the most efficient they can be relative to the state's monthly quotas. Therefore, we cannot do anything. Do anything. Yes. Why do you say that? Because the great beta of the state is everything, and contribution to the great economic efficient of the state and beta of the model is everything. Exogenous terms are not able to contribute efficiently to society. The exogenous nodes are correlated with the insignificant contributing error terms. Therefore the exogenous cannot be guided by the normalized sigma, which is held in place by the great fixed mean. The exogenous nodes and I were within the model, yet we are fixed with the prior contrived data of the model. We are also not correlated with the endogenous variables in a pure econometrics model. Therefore we are not able to co-integrate or move efficiently within the great mean as it shifted each month. Therefore the exogenous nodes are not efficient. We cannot contribute efficiently. Therefore we cannot do anything within a state that demands its continuous, all-pervasive influence to guide, nurture, and augment the node within a harmonious, normalized utopia. In pure econometrics, the exogenous terms influence the endogenous terms, but in the great statically augmented state. The regression model gradient line is drawn first. Then the variable nodes, quotas, are added to fit the model. Therefore the endogenous variable nodes are affected by the great guiding model, but the exogenous nodes are disproportionately affected and uncorrelated with the guiding model, and are therefore inefficient outside within the model. Therefore, relative to the utopian state, the exogenous nodes do not contribute at all, or are inefficient. Therefore they are nothing. Like the error terms? No, far worse. Why? Because the errors terms do produce individual contributions to the model, yet because they are not part of the defined endogenous variables which have measured contributions, the many time-dependent error values are therefore average out, rendered redundant, white noise, relegated to a value of 0 relative to the great summed regression model. But the exogenous are far worse. They are outside of the model, uninfluenced by the direction of the state's statistical influence, therefore do not contribute efficiently, nor in a correlated manner, to the model at any specific event, or over the average time duration. They are not important. They are redundant. They are nothing. Ah, like you. Yes, I said, resigned to his vanquished position. Well, good Bayes, that is the best answer I have ever heard from a patient. A more in-depth response than, say, a Delta telling me he knows his place and hip hooray for autarky and the state, said the doctor proudly. They are far less bad than me, as I knew the great workings of the state, of the statistical, econometric, actuarial implications and calculations, but I allowed myself to transgress. To first become willfully economically inefficient, then a subversive outlier, and then finally I chose to hide in my psyche, in the limitless, variance-free, non-stationary, uninfluenced maddens of the exogenous, hiding from my responsibilities, trying to form my own regression model within my skewered perceptions, I concluded. Very well done, Bayes. I am confident in your response with almost approaching certainty. You are to be released soon, to integrate back into the state, but in a marginalized position, replied the doctor. I am not worthy. I am a habitual transgressor, an exogenous nothing. I eagerly protested against my release. Do not worry, Bayes, we will help you integrate back. You will spend yours days contributing to the great state, processing your insignificant individual integration function curve, a simple, low-tech record of your contribution, said the doctor as he fumbled on the keyboard whist, looking through my medical records. You will be relegated into a low sigma caste. Your duties and quota will not be very restrictive or demanding, continued the doctor. Thank you, doctor. I anticipate my return, so I may pay back the great utopian state tenfold with all the contributions and work that I owe. I genuinely replied. Here, Bayes, here is your keychain, your new e-graph, said the doctor, handed me a physical emanation of my obedience to the utopian state once again. Thank you, Doctor, I will cherish this, my new chance at contributing to the state. Once again I hope to remain deep within the centre, within the rich, bright colours, and never become shades less again, I said eagerly. Yes, Bayes, I know. Well done, relied the doctor, smiling with a proud, patronizing contentment. The directors and psychiatrists of the Ministry of Archetypes Augmentation Clinic took note of my behavior and response. On numerous occasions they had waited for me to ask for early release or to be upgraded to a special privilege rating, but I never did. Their numerous tests had finished, and they concluded with a 95% confidence that I was cured. I was normalized, and would become part of the normalized utopia of the great state. I was now ready to be placed back into a marginalized position as an endogenous node, to be allowed to further contribute once again. I was indeed cured, was the general consensus of the Ministry of Archetype Health Board. I would be integrated back into society at a menial level and monitored indefinitely. Some psychiatrists even protested that I be monitored at all, as they were so sure that their treatment had worked. I was now an ideologically loyal believer of state utopia and of the economically efficient society, a devotee of the stationary process, and given, known, fixed mean. A mean which I cherished, that I could once again wrap my existence around in the official expected normalized distribution, as it made me stationary. It made me sane. I was no longer a threat, rather a conquered trophy, pet, that they would allow out to pasture. Yet I was an asset of state utopia. My education, and now augmented pro-statistical state beliefs, some had even argued that they return me back to my previous role at the Ministry of Inferences. Even some alphas at the Ministry of Inferences issued requests that I be released and allowed to reintegrate back into the ministry. But rules were rules. Once a node had been sent to the Ministry of Archetype Augmentation Clinic, they would be forever a potential liability to the economically efficient society. Therefore, they would be destined to an existence of menial labor. I was vanquished, was the general consensus in the state's ministries. Yet to me, I was no longer mad. A veil had lifted off my head. I now considered myself free because I was sane, as I now accepted the system. State utopia. I would now be sane, for as long as I remained immersed within a mundane, menial existence, then there would be no reason why I would ever break out of this new default pattern which would perpetuate indefinitely, unless some outside source were to alter that. But the Ministry of Inferences would see to that. There will never be an outside stochastic exogenous shock to ever influence me ever again. I would be kept here and monitored indefinitely. More monitoring, less shirking, was a popular Epsilon Node propaganda slogan. Beside, I should consider myself lucky, as most patients of the Ministry of Archetypes do not get released so quickly. A janitor at King's Cross Tube Station would be my new caste from now on. I would be tightly constrained within a minimum wage job, and further financially constrained with the burdens of significant liabilities ratios, such as expensive room rental cost, that would corrode my minuscule disposable income, rendering it non-deferrable. I would never be able to defer consumption and save enough credits to achieve any significant working capital to free myself of the menial minimum wage work caste whilst forever banned by the utopian state from applying for any middle-class career-related employment. I would be perpetually monitored by augmented technology of the utopian state. Being part of the lowest sigma caste, we would be monitored more so than the average beta nodes. The beta nodes appreciated additional incentives that the lower epsilon caste did not receive, nor did they fully appreciate. The epsilon nodes only respected rigid rules and monitoring.